Hey guys, I'm John Barklow, and I want to talk to you about ventilating shelters. So, have you ever woken up in the morning in a tent and it's frosted on the inside, or there's a bunch of water built up on the inside, and as soon as you start moving, it's like being in a snow globe, or it starts raining on top of you and your gear? So all that is due to poor ventilation in that shelter. This moisture builds up from a lot of stuff. It builds up from our gear, our clothing, the food that we've eaten, and even our exhalations. We can exhale up to 8 ounces a day just by breathing. And so if you're inside there with your gear, or if you have multiple people inside a shelter with their gear, all this moisture starts building up inside that shelter. And so to get rid of it, you need to have airflow to flush that moisture out. Now, depending on the shelter, certain shelters are going to do that more efficiently than others. A single wall shelter, so think about a TP tent, a wall tent, even a bivy sack that just has one layer of material. These shelters are going to be difficult to ventilate because the materials that they're made out of aren't really inherently breathable, but that's what makes them waterproof. Now, a double wall shelter like this tent, where the tent body is separated from the rainfly, those breathe a lot better. And so when you go into more humid environments like coastal Alaska and Canada and the Pacific Northwest, or maybe you're just looking for one tent or shelter to do it all, a double wall tent's a good place to start. Now, to get the ventilation you need to open up vents if they're in the shelter, or doors is really what I like to use. If it's fair weather, it's mild temps, there's no insects, I like to leave all the doors open and just let all the air flush through. It's refreshing and you're not going to get any condensation buildup. But now if you have insects, depending on the shelter, if you have mosquito netting on the doors, then you zip up the mosquito netting. Now some shelters aren't going to have that. But it's when we get into inclement weather that we really start to get into the poor ventilation scenarios. So if it's raining and I'm concerned about getting moisture inside, or it's a snowstorm, or it's windy and it's blowing moisture inside, I'm going to close up this exterior door. So on the vestibule here, I would close that up, but I'm going to try to keep that tent door open to have some air blow up underneath the vestibule, and again, keep good ventilation. Now there are going to be times where snow's building up, it's really windy, and even though you have the vestibule door closed, it's going to start blowing snow or rain inside. So I've unfortunately had this happen more than too many times, either hunting in Kodiak, Alaska, or mountaineering. And at that point, you want to start zipping up your tent door as well, but I would suggest that you only zip up the tent door as far as you need. And so people think that, oh man, it's winter, I got to zip up the whole thing, but that's where the condensation problem occurs. So you want to make sure when you do zip up that door that you try to keep the top open as much as possible, because that's where we want the airflow to go through. So these are all things that you need to consider. Now, again, not every shelter is going to be adequate to ventilate depending on the environment. But really, at the end of the day, you have to get out there and kind of figure this out for yourself. I get a lot of questions about how to ventilate tents and what I use and why certain tents or shelters are not as good as others. At the end of the day, you have to go out and figure it out for yourself, because you do not need to live with condensation buildup inside your tents.